Well, that's a very pertinent question because the traffic situation in Kirkmichael has been a big issue for a number of years, and we've actually got a scheme which is going to be starting in very early in the new year to improve the road situation in Kirkmichael, particularly around arrangements for pedestrians. And the key thing is actually slowing the traffic down and reducing that sense of speeding traffic in there, because that in that village it's a very almost a tunnel effect, because the building's been on both sides of the road, and there is a lot of heavy traffic that goes through there. The scheme has been carefully designed to try and address that. In terms of speed cameras, I mean they're a tool that.
Do you approve of speed cameras?
From a personal point of view, I'm quite relaxed about speed cameras, and I'm on the public record as saying that I'm happy to introduce them to the island where the local community is in favour of them, and certainly in the conversations in Kirkmichael about the traffic highway scheme, there was a positive endorsement of that from the local community.
So it'd be fair to say you can take them or leave them. You're not an advocate for speed cameras.
I'm an advocate for people driving safely at the right speed, and I think speed cameras have a part to play in that. But it's about it's about setting the parameters and then enforcing against it. And whether it's a speed camera, whether it's a police constable with a speed gun, they're just different tools of achieving the same objective. And we absolutely need to deliver more safe roads, and it's also making the environment more livable, that where people work and travel. And I'm looking for a balanced approach in my time in DOI that balances up the needs of the motorist with the pedestrian, with the cyclist and the horse rider, and tries to reflect that all of those people have legitimate needs to use the travel corridors. And I would like to sort of see us make significant progress in that regard. And of course there was the motion in Tynwald back in October, where Mrs. Corlett's amendment passed, and we committed to doing significant amounts of work around, particularly in towns and around schools. And
was this a 20-mile-an-hour limit?
It's a 20-mile-an-hour scheme around in those areas, yes. But that's part of a wider agenda around the road safety strategy and action plan.
What's it called? Officially, the Liverpool...
The Isle of Man Ferry Terminal at Liverpool.
Okay, this is Princess Half-Tide Dock. It is. At what stage are we at, and when will it be finished?
Well, we're making good progress, and we're actually now out of the ground, and the work is progressing nicely. However, clearly, it's being done in quite difficult circumstances, with the COVID implications particularly affecting the city of Liverpool, as well as the national lockdown that the UK currently has. So that's not helped. And again, similar to the prom, there were some pretty challenging ground conditions with voids and archaeological discoveries as well in the site. It is a historic site. It's a brownfield site. These sites are difficult to develop, as we see on the Isle of Man. The brownfield sites. And
it was a disused dock, wasn't it?
It was. That's right. And we're now about halfway through in terms of spend, and we're making good progress. But the timescales are slipping. And we're currently looking at a contractual completion date of January 2022, which is somewhat later than we'd originally hoped for.
Now, does this mean we'll be shunted across to Birkenhead, or will we continue to use the pierhead?
So the reason that the steam packet were not being able to use the pierhead was because of the cruise terminal being developed in Liverpool. And that scheme is having the same sort of challenges as our own scheme.
And there are no cruises anyway.
Well, absolutely, the market's changed big time for cruisers, but also in terms of their construction program and the things that they have to deal with in that. So, from what I'm aware of, the need for the steam packet company to vacate the existing landing stage is not going to be as urgent as was first thought. They are the tenant of that landing stage, and Peel Properties, Peel Ports, are the landlord, and it is a commercial matter between the steam packet company and Peel Group to work that through. But my belief is that they will come to some sort of commercial understanding to retain that until until our Isle of Man ferry terminal in Liverpool is completed.
Okay, this is in from Chris. The Minister said we must use buses more as part of government plans for us and cited climate change. But when cars are more environmentally friendly, why does he think we must use buses more, especially when most people on the island are nowhere near a bus stop? And also, as an accountant by profession, he must know that buses cost the taxpayer and cars put money into the treasury.
Quite a lot of things within that comment. Why do I think? I think a good public transport system is really integral to good infrastructure, and of course, not everybody has the luxury of being able to fund their own private vehicles. So we have a need to provide for people who don't have their own car or choose not to have it, or can't drive on health grounds, for instance. The bus services are subsidised. Chris is right in that regard. But I think if you did a whole cost exercise on cars, it would lead you to question the statement he's made there about cars putting money back in to the Treasury, because obviously there's a big investment programme in the highway infrastructure needed for cars and buses to travel on. So it's not as simple as that, but
well, drivers would know on a personal level that the money goes out. I mean, a significant proportion of the cost of fuel is duty. Obviously, there's road vehicle license, what they used to call road tax as well. So all that money will continue to go out. And again, I guess the travelling public is looking for leadership in this. Is it going to be an absolutely wonderful public transport system or cars?
You can't get away from the need for motor vehicles somewhere like the Isle of Man. I mean, it's too spread out, and you can't meet everybody's requirements through public transport. So let me be really clear about that. But equally, many of the journeys that we make on a day-to-day basis don't necessarily require a car. I mean, most people drive from home to work, leave their cars parked up, and then drive home again at the end of the day. And in many cases, those journeys could be made by public transport. We have a very good, in my view, public transport service on the island, particularly around the key routes between the major population centres. But that doesn't necessarily serve well people who live in rural areas, and we need to make sure that we've got a network that serves the island. Obviously, there's a climate change angle on all this, and there's a congestion angle, and more use of public transport, I think, is definitely part of the way forward. But I'm absolutely not saying everybody has to travel by bus, and I don't think I did say that earlier either.
Okay. Let's go to Juan now, who's you're live with Tim Baker, MHK. Juan.
Good afternoon, Andy. Good afternoon, Tim.
Good afternoon, Juan.
Good afternoon. I thought you're getting off a bit lightly there. You're not getting many calls through, so I thought I'd just liven up a bit for you. You're talking there, I mean, obviously we've got a green agenda, which is not just an Isle of Man agenda. This is the Great World Reset, as being called. So I take it that the Isle of Man government is following quite closely to a green agenda with a lot of things. But just going off that onto the Promenade project, which is kind of a hot potato. I think your department at the moment has got quite a few hot potatoes in the oven at the moment with the landlord's bill and the Promenade. Obviously, it's a small island, and you hear lots of things that's going on, but there seems to be people don't seem to be seeing any progress in the Promenade. And I understand totally that you've got a massive amount of work going on underneath there, and I appreciate that. But I also hear that government keep changing the goalposts for the people that are working there. And 1 minute you've got one plan, 1 minute you've got the next, and consequently now you've got a whole promenade that's dug up. And I think the question a lot of people would ask is, why was this not done in sections so people could actually see a bit of the promenade actually done and finished, and then move on to another section? Where at the moment it just seems to be like Beirut every day that you go down there. And I do appreciate you've been doing a massive amount of work underneath, and the Victorians didn't have much paperwork and planning going on that you can follow. But what's going on upstairs seems to be a little bit discoordinated between the people that are there. I mean, subcontractors are pulling off the job because they're not getting paid in time, and then pulling back on the job. So who's actually in charge of all that? And is there anything being choreographed properly with all that side of things?
Well, some very good points in what you said there, Dewan. And I mean, I would take issue with the comment that there's not much progress going on. I think now we're in the phase where actually the progress is quite visible, and certainly I make a point of driving along the prom on a daily or every other day basis, and you see in a much better level of activity and some real tangible progress.
Well, you know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
You know the plans. I mean, to most people, you'll drive down it. It looks a mess. It's not a mess, is it? There is a plan to all this.
Of course, there's a plan to it. I mean, this is basically a very elongated building site in which a major civil engineering project is going on, and it is probably the worst site you would choose to be doing a project. It's right in the centre of the capital. It's in a residential area. It's in a business area. It's a major thoroughfare, and it's right in the glare of the public spotlight. So it's very, very challenging for the whole team that's involved in this, both from the department and from Alding Construction, who are the main contractors, and the subcontractors. And what I would say is the point's been made about changing plans. Yes, plans have changed. I mean, clearly the timescales that the project has worked on have changed as we've gone along. COVID obviously allowed an opportunity to change some of the constraints on the contractor, which allowed them to open up on more fronts. These things obviously have a ripple effect through the scheme. But the other point is, as soon as you find something under the ground that is different from what you're expecting, that has to be reflected in your design and in how you react to that. I would acknowledge that in the early stages of the scheme, perhaps the reaction to finding something not as was expected was probably a little on the slow side. But we've now got very much a joined-up approach with DOI, Manx Utilities, the contractor, all working in a very collaborative manner to try and get the job done. Dewan's, you made the point about why could the work not have been done in sections. I think the reality is, because it's a services project and the length of the prom and the length of the runs of things like the water pipes and the gas pipes, I think it would have been probably not practical to have broken it up into sections and completed them in the way that you've envisaged. From my point of view, that game plan was already set before I became minister. So, I'm very much focused on picking up what I've got and actually driving it forward to what's required, which is getting the job done.
Okay. Anything else to say, Dewan?
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. And like I said from the off there, I understand that you're doing a massive amount of work underneath. I'd still hold point on things and not getting choreographed enough on the top. I know from talking to different people what's going on and what's been going on. And I just wanted to know what connection there was with government, with the contractors and the subcontractors, because there is problems there. And probably that's a story to pick up on another day. The other point I wanted to make before I go Beside obviously stressing that there's a lot of green agendas going on the island at the moment, and this is not Manx Problems for Manx Solutions. This is following an international initiative for green agenda. And again, there's points there which I think are sensible. But again, when activists get started in this agenda, it goes down one track and you don't meet any middle ground. So I'm just hoping that the Isle of Man government will see sense and come to middle ground on this, because it's going to cost people massive fortunes of money to change to this new green agenda. And like you said before about people leaving their cars at home, Tim, I don't think on a day like this they'd want to be leaving their cars at home, to be quite honest with you. Okay. And the other thing I just wanted to quickly put on to, I'm sure you've got other people waiting to come on. There's a lot of stuff going on at the moment, a lot of legislation that's going on behind the scenes with the Isle of Man government, and of course you're in Comyn, so you'll know what the Secret Seven are up to. But I find that going on to the landlords bill, you've designed 85 pages of landlords regulations, and that seems like a hammer to crack a nut. I actually wanted to discuss it with you at the Port St Mary meeting, but unfortunately you weren't there, so I had to discuss it with your civil servants. But again, this is another agenda which I think there's regulations in place to service this quite aptly at the moment, and you know who the bad landlords are. So the people who are good landlords and are putting a lot of investment and money into their houses are going to get caught up in the swirl of all this. And I think it's something that you really now should be sitting down and talking it out with the Landlords Association, because the first thing that I did when I went into that meeting, sorry Andy, I'll cut off after this one, I go in there and your timeline boards and everything, the first thing I see is £10,000 fines and imprisonment. Well, that's not the way to go about negotiating and coming to terms with landlords, because they're the people that are making accommodation for people on this island. Without them, you're going to have a massive problem with housing. So I think you really need to sit down and talk in a little bit better terms with people. That's really all I've got to say at this point.
Okay, all right.
Back on that, Ewan.
Very quickly, yeah.
We are talking to the Manx Landlords Association. We've had two meetings with them, and they're very, very engaged, and I believe we're moving forward in a positive direction. You're right, I wasn't at the Port St Mary meeting, but I was at the Ramsey and the Braddon ones. The people have jumped on the imprisonment and the fines. That's an absolute last resort. Good landlords have got nothing to fear from this, and I actually think that positive opportunities will emerge from this in due course for landlords. So I think a lot of the fears have been overdone. 85 pages of legislation is it's difficult for people to digest, but I really do think that this has been made out to be far worse than it actually is. Okay,
all right, Ewan, thanks for calling us today. Good points, well made. And Alistair with us. Good afternoon, Alistair. You're live with Tim Baker.
Oh, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Baker.
Good afternoon, Alistair.
Now, when I want to speak about it, I'm looking a little bit to the future here. The near future, when the promenade is finished. I really do think that I can't stress enough the importance of having a serious look with Douglas Council into the parking for the shops in Douglas. This is a very, very serious crisis all over the United Kingdom, if not all over the world. And the shops have got to try and survive. They're against the online shopping, which is it's growing by the day. And a lot of this, in every high street in the whole United Kingdom, is down to the lack of parking facilities for shoppers. And I'd just like to see what you've got to say about this yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Alistair. I mean, you're right. The high street is under pressure everywhere, and it's been a result of the growth in online shopping and also the diversification of supermarkets, particularly in the UK, to become general retailers. Vibrant town centres are absolutely of great importance to the Isle of Man and I would say elsewhere. And car parking is absolutely part of that equation, alongside the whole experience of shopping and the service that retailers provide. And
are you happy that enough provision's going to be made for parking in Douglas?
Yes,
because a lot of spaces are going on the prom, aren't they?
There is a reduction once the prom scheme is completed. There is a net reduction. You can't have everything. All the requirements met. There is a reduction in that, but we're working with the Department for Enterprise. We're working with the business community to try and respond to their needs. So we've now got Chester Street and Drumgold Street come back into DOI's management from Douglas Borough Councils. We've put the disc zone parking into Chester Street, which has gone down extremely well. We're looking at some changes to the Parade Street car parking to facilitate shorter term parking, and that's come from contact and discussions with certainly one of the local hospitality businesses, and of course there's the Lord Street development, which in due course will deliver enhanced car parking, and potentially some of the other developments as they come into effect. So we absolutely need to keep pushing on this.
Okay, we'll wrap up in just a few moments' time with Tim Baker, MHK. He's been our guest in the past hour on the Mannin Line.